Hello and welcome to the Dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video I wanted to go over the 1 D&D Unearthed Arcana for the Paladin. Yes, I realize I haven't done Druid yet, but what can I say? Paladins are one of my favorite classes, so I was a little more excited to cover that one. Although Druid will be upcoming, don't worry. I like Druids too, it's just, Paladin is one of my favorites. So, there are quite a few changes. I'll go over the list really quickly here, but I don't want to have to go into tons of detail on everything. We'll cover more of that when we start going through the individual abilities. So, a couple of the big changes that are definitely worth noting though. Number one, spellcasting right at first level. This isn't really a big surprise because Rangers got the same thing, but it's definitely a change. Also, of course, notice that we have cantrips right at level 1, and we also have on this list Channel Divinity uses. So that was one thing that Paladins were kind of lacking before, is they really only had like one use of your Channel Divinity per day. It looks like that's going to be changing as well. Lay on Hands, we'll talk about that more later. So level 2 we're getting Divine Smite and a fighting style. Level 3, Channel Divinity and a Paladin subclass. Level 4 we're getting our feet. Level 5 we're getting extra attack and Faithful Steed. This is quite a bit different. It's basically the Find Steed spell, except now it's a Paladin ability instead, which I kind of prefer, to be honest. Also, the Steed seems to be better than the old Find Steed was, so, that's also a good thing, I think. Level 6, we're getting a subclass feature, and level 7, we get Aura Protection. This basically used to be the other way around. We got Aura Protection at 6, and we got, a subclass feature, which was often another Aura at 7, but now it's the opposite. 8, we're getting feet. No surprise there. That's basically standard. 9, Observe Foes. We didn't used to get anything, so whatever. 10, getting a subclass feature. That didn't used to occur there, but that's okay. Radiant Strikes at 11. This basically just replaces our improved Divine Strikes, I guess, or Divine Smite, sorry. I guess maybe it helps to differentiate by not using basically the exact same name almost. So, that's kind of handy. Also, the ability itself has been changed a little bit, which, I think is okay. Level 12, features everybody else. Level 13, Aura of Courage. We used to get this earlier, but it has been changed. So, moving it back 3 levels isn't such a bad thing. Level 14, we're getting subclass feature. We used to get Cleansing Touch here. Level 15, we get Restoring Touch, which is basically just replaced Cleansing Touch. And, we used to get a subclass feature here. So, once again, or a Sacred Oath feature, which is basically the same thing, right? So, once again, basically, our level of these abilities, our 14th and 15th abilities have essentially just switched. Level 16, we're getting feet. Level 17, we're getting the Aura Expansion. We didn't used to get that to 18. Now we're getting Divine Conduit at 18. And then 19, we're getting feet. And, of course, level 20, we used to get a Sacred Oath feature. But basically every class now just gets an Epic Bonus or Capstone, which is okay, because then you get some variety and choice of what you want to take, and you can, personalize things a little more. Or just pick the most powerful options, of course, because, that's what we do as players. Anyways, creating a Paladin, most of this is the same. I do like that they've added in a section here talking about multiclassing, talking about proficiencies gained, your armor trading, etc., or armor training, etc. And it helps. You don't have to like flip all through the book trying to find the rules on like, oh, if I'm multiclass into Paladin, what do I get for armors and stuff, And now it's just right here. I think that's a big improvement for, just simple layout. It's not really a rules change because it was the same before. We got light, medium, and shield. We did not get heavy if we didn't have heavy multiclass into Paladin later. But like I said, it's right here. That's a lot more convenient. I like it. So anyways, let's take a look at some of the specific features. So first up is Lay on Hands. It's basically the same thing. We've got our pool of hit points equal to 5 times our Paladin level. It says, as a magic action, which wasn't really an action thing before, but whatever, you can touch a creature, which could be yourself, draw power from the pool of healing to restore a number of hit points to that creature, up to the maximum remaining in the pool. In addition, you can expend 5 hit points from the pool of healing to remove the poisoned condition from the creature, rather than using those points to restore hit points. So right off the bat, it's worth mentioning that we used to also be able to cure disease, and we used to also be immune to disease with a level 3 ability. That doesn't seem to be here either. So I've seen some people speculate that this is because they don't think disease is going to be a big deal in 1D&D. I mean, to be fair, it's not really a big deal in 5th or any of the previous editions either. That's the opinion I tend to believe in. But there's always a slim chance that disease could be a bigger deal, and they just don't want, easy solution like the Paladin to be able to cure it. They want you to actually use spell slots or something. That's possible. I just don't think that's probably what's going to happen. Anyways, so of course we've prepared spells. Like I said, we now have cantrips we didn't used to have, and we're getting spell casting at first level. All in all, these are just pretty big improvements, I guess you could say. So, can't really complain too much there. We've got our spell slots, spellcasting ability, of course, is our charisma still, and we've got our spellcasting focus, blah, blah, blah. Second level, Divine Smite. And this one has been kind of a popular talking point since this has been released. Excuse me for a second. Because there's been some changes. So, when you strike a target, you can channel divine energy to smite it. Immediately after you hit a target with an attack roll using a weapon or an unarmed strike, which is different, you can expend one spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target. The damage is 2d8 for first level spell slot, plus 1d8 for each spell slot, or for each slot higher than first. You can use Divine Smite no more than once during a turn, and can't use it on the same turn that you cast a spell. So, let's go over all this. Number one, they've removed the restriction that limited it to melee weapons, which does open up things like ranged builds, like bows or whatever else, to use Divine Smite with, which I personally think is kind of nice. I like the idea of having more options instead of less, and it seems to funnel you into that, or force you into that frontline role a little less than it did before, which just gives you more options, which I like. It also specifies you can use it with an unarmed strike, which does give you some Iron Fist type Paladin Monk multi-class potential. I mean, you can still only use it once around though, so whatever, or once per turn. Sorry. This does seem to bring it more in line with what we currently see from Eldritch Smite, the Warlock ability, which is also limited to once per turn. But that one knocks things prone. So I imagine that the 1D&D version will probably be very similar to the Paladin one. Maybe it'll do force damage instead of radiant, but I doubt there'll be any significant differences, which is a little unfortunate. I like the classes to be well balanced, but also distinguished from one another, and not just have everything be some, homogeneous blend where they're all basically the same with just different flavor text. I don't like that. So overall, this does seem to be a bit of a nerf. You also can't use it on the same turn that you cast a spell, which means that, if you want to cast a smite spell, you couldn't Divine Smite with it. You also couldn't do something like, say, use your movement to try to get into combat, then Misty Step, and then, smite with your attacks. So that, just in general, it's a lot weaker than it was before. But it does prevent people from doing things like, making Paladin fighter multi-classes where you're dual wielding and action surging and, dropping 5 smites in a turn kind of thing. And as fun as that can be sometimes, I don't really blame them for wanting to make changes to that. However, this does remind me of that interview where Jeremy Crawford, somebody asked him about the melee, or the martial classes, sorry, not melee, but the martial classes in general, because they were talking about nerfs to things like Great Whip Mastery and to Sharpshooter. And he said, don't worry, the martials are going to be bringing the damage. And I actually thought 5th edition did a pretty decent job. Every edition, spellcasting always ends up, especially when you get high-level spells, always ends up being more impactful than melee. But in 5th edition, instead of trying to balance melee versus spellcasting, it's like they kind of realized that spellcasting is going to be better, but we're going to allow the melee guys to really dish out a lot of damage to compensate. And the people who really just care about doing lots of damage are going to be happy playing those kind of classes, you know? And the people who want to be able to cast spells are going to be able to do that. It feels like, so far from what we've seen, spellcasting is still going to be great. And, you know, with nerfs to things like Divine Smite and to Sharpshooter and to Crit with Mastery, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll all be a little different. On the other hand, maybe they'll adopt, you know, some house rules. Like I know in one of Trent Monk's videos, he mentioned that he allows anyone to take a -5 penalty and a +10 damage on an attack. You don't have to have feats. He just allows you to do that on any attack. And the feats still have their other benefits, right? So Sharpshooter allows you to ignore the, you know, cover with, you know, and allows you to ignore the range penalties, right? Crit with Mastery still allows you to make an extra attack if you get a killing blow or a critical attack. And Treat Monk said that he limited it to only attacks made with the attack action. So you couldn't take the -5 +10 without the feat on like a bonus action attack or a reaction attack. I think things like that are pretty good ideas. I don't know why you can't, you know, aim better with a rapier, for example, but you can with, you know, an arrow, right? I mean, whatever. Anyways, that's a giant aside. Has nothing to do with anything. Just saying that I do worry a little that the marshals will not be bringing the damage that we were promised. Anyways, Divine Smite. Oh, we just read that one, sorry. Fighting style. You've honed your martial prowess and gained a fighting style defense feat, or you can gain another fighting style feat of your choice. Whenever you gain a feat at later levels, fighting style feats are among your options, even though you aren't a member of the warrior group. So, before, paladins were pretty limited in what feats they could take. So, there doesn't seem to be any restrictions on it now, just all the fighting style feats are available to you, which again is pretty good. It does open up a lot more options for what you want to play. Level 3, Channel Divinity. So you start with one such effect, Divine Sense, which is described below. Other paladin features give additional Channel Divinity effect options. Each time you use this Channel Divinity, you choose which effect to create among those you have from this class. So you can use Channel Divinity twice, blah, blah, blah. Of course, you get more uses according to the Paladin table. We already talked about that. If your Channel Divinity effect requires a saving throw, the DC equals the spell save DC from this class's spellcasting feature. So, Divine Sense. As a bonus action, you can open your awareness to detect celestials, fiends, and undead. For the next 10 minutes, or until you have the incapacitated condition, you know the location of any creature of those types within 60 feet of yourself, and you know its creature type. Within the same radius, you also detect the presence of any place or object that has been consecrated or desecrated, as with the Hallow spell. So this is just way better. It's removed the line of sight conditions and other things that really made Divine Sense kind of worthless. I mean, it was nice to be able to detect that you had a fiend within 60 feet of you, but if it was behind a wall or if it was invisible or whatever else, then the ability didn't function, really. So, you know, now it's more like a radar, you know? It's like, okay, I've got a fiend within 60 feet of me, and it lasts for 10 minutes or until you're incapacitated. Generally just way better than it was before. So, level 3, we got our subclass. You gain Oath of Devotion subclass or another Paladin subclass of your choice. The Oath of Devotion is detailed after the Paladin's class descriptions, and the other subclasses will appear in future Unearthed Arcana articles. Alright, so of course we know what a subclass is. We'll go through the Oath of Devotion when we're done the main stuff. Before we got feat, I already mentioned that. Actual attack, of course, we already mentioned that. Faithful Steed. You can easily call on the aid of an otherworldly steed. You always have the Find Steed spell prepared, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you can prepare. When you cast a spell, its casting time is an action. You also cast a spell once without, or you can cast it once without expending a spell slot, and you gain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. So, it actually is still a spell. I misspoke earlier. I thought that it was just a class ability now, but no. You just get the spell for free, and you can cast it once without it counting against your spell slots. Anyways, like I said, we've got our level 6 feature. Used to be level 7, whatever. That's going to be subclass specific. We get Aura Protection. You ready to protect an invisible aura that extends 10 feet from you in every direction but doesn't extend through total cover. So you gain an aura bonus equal to your charisma modifier +1. If another paladin is present, a creature can benefit from only one aura protection at a time. The creature chooses which one when entering the auras. So, yeah, pretty much unchanged other than getting pushed back one level. But that's okay. Aura protection is awesome, so nothing wrong with that. Level 9, Abjure Foes. As a magic action, you can expend one use of your channel divinity to overwhelm foes with divine awe. As you present your holy symbol or weapon, however you can use your weapon, you can target a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier, maximum or minimum one creature, that you can see within 60 feet of yourself. Each target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the target has the dazed and frightened conditions for 1 minute or until it takes any damage. On a successful save, the target has a dazed condition for 1 minute or until it takes any damage. So I like this quite a bit. Number one, you can try to basically turn multiple targets. Yes, it breaks on damage, but I like the fact that even if they succeed, they're still taking on the dazed condition. It makes it seem a lot more worthwhile to give up my attack action if I'm guaranteed to at least get some sort of a result with this ability. And since you can only smite once per turn now, instead of on multiple occasions, that also makes things like this a little more tempting. The opportunity cost isn't as high. Anyways, of course we got a subclass on level 11. When you hit a target with an attack roll using a simple or martial weapon, the target takes an extra 1d8 radiant damage. So note that this is still restricted to being simple and martial weapons only. It does not say unarmed strikes. So, keep that in mind, I guess. However, there is no restriction on whether or not those martial weapons or simple weapons are ranged or not. So, once again, leaves that possibility open. 12, we got a feat, or 13, Aura of Courage, immune to frightened condition while in your Aura of Protection. If a frightened ally enters the aura, the condition is suppressed while the ally is there. Note that it doesn't dispel it, but it says the ability is suppressed while the ally is there. So I think that's kind of interesting. It also makes sense, though. People can run to the paladin for protection from your aura of protection. So 14, we get a subclass feature. 15, we get Restoring Touch. When you use a lay on hands on a creature, you can also remove one or more of the following conditions from the creature: blinded, charmed, dazed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, or stunned. You must expend 5 hit points from the healing pool of lay on hands for each of these conditions you remove. Those hit points, or those points, don't also restore hit points to the creature. So pretty strong though, because some of those conditions, especially like paralyzed, for example, even charmed, those things can be really, or stunned for that matter. Actually, they're all pretty bad. Frightened, I mean, they're all bad. So the fact that you can just spend 5 of your points and remove those is actually a huge bargain, because by the time you're level 15, you've got a huge pool to draw from. So 5 points is nothing. Anyway, 16 we get a feat or ability score improvement. 17, Aura Expansion. Your Aura extends 30 feet now rather than 10 feet, which is great, honestly. I mean, it really just means that everybody in the party is probably going to be able to benefit from the aura. Level 18, Divine Conduit. Whenever you roll initiative, you regain 1 use of this class's channel divinity. I don't know how great this is, honestly, because I feel like by this point you've already got a lot of uses of channel divinity, but who knows? On some subclasses, I guess, depending on what your channel divinity is, it can be a really great ability. So I guess we'll have to see. Anyways, level 19, another feat. Level 20, Epic Boon. So now we look at the Paladin subclass. There's also a section on breaking your oath, of course, and then they go into the Oath of Devotion. Now, I mentioned this when I did my actual Oath of Devotion video from back in the day. To me, Oath of Devotion isn't necessarily my favorite, but it is the most iconic. You know, when you think of a paladin, somebody upholding good and virtue and protecting the innocent and the weak and all that stuff, that is just Oath of Devotion to a T. And I really like that, you know, Oath of Devotion actually, in my opinion, looks even better than it was before. So, you know, that's good. Anyways, so they go ahead and go through, they explain what it is and about upholding the strictest standards of conduct. They talk about the tenets of honesty, courage, compassion, and honor. Oh, and duty. It's on the top page. They go through the oath spells, talk about prepared spells, free casting, etc. So the devotion spells, we now get protection from good and evil and shield of faith. We used to get protection from good and evil and sanctuary. Level 5, we get aid and the zone of truth. We used to get lesser restoration and zone of truth. Level 9, aura vitality and blinding smite. These are both completely different. We used to get beacon of hope and dispel magic. Level 13, guardian of faith and staggering smite. We used to get freedom of movement and guardian of faith. Level 17, commune and flame strike. Those are still exactly the same. So, which is almost unfortunate because I hate flame strike, especially when you're getting it at a 17th level. Anyways, sacred weapon. As a bonus action, expend one use of your channel divinity to imbue one simple or martial weapon you are holding with positive energy. I will look at it as a bonus action now instead of a full action. For 1 minute, you can add your charisma modifier to attack rolls you make with that weapon, minimum bonus of +1, and each time you hit with it, you cause it to deal its normal damage type or radiant damage. Now note that's a charisma bonus to the attack roll, not to the damage roll, but you can change the damage type to radiant, which is pretty nice, especially at low levels when you might be fighting things that can't be affected by regular weapons. However, once you have magical weapons, this does become a little less useful because honestly, like magical slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing weapons are some of the most reliable damage types in the entire game. Radiant is too, and there could potentially, maybe you're fighting shadow demons or something that's actually vulnerable to radiant damage. You never know. You could get lucky in situations like that. But either way, just having the option is better than not having the option, right? So, you know, nice to see. Especially at low levels when things like immunity or resistance to non-magical weapons can be a real issue. Anyways, the weapon also emits bright light in a 20-foot radius and dim light for 20 feet beyond that. You can end its effect as a bonus action. The effect also ends if you aren't holding or carrying the weapon or if you have the incapacitated condition. So like I said, this is basically just straight up better. The fact that it's a bonus action is a real game changer. That was one of the things that I found really kind of held back the Oath of Devotion before, was that it took your action. So, you know, if you wanted to get into a fight, you had to either pre-use it and then hope that the minute hadn't run out, or you're spending your first round just basically enchanting your weapon, essentially. Anyways, 6th level, Smite of Protection. Your Divine Smite now radiates protective energy that allows you and your allies to stay in the fight. Whenever you use your Divine Smite, choose yourself or an ally within 30 feet of yourself. The chosen creature gains temporary hit points equal to 1d8 plus the level of the spell slot you used for the Divine Smite. This is actually pretty nice. I also, thematically, I like the idea that you can like buff, you know, party members with your smite. And it kind of removes the, oh, do I buff them or do I deal damage? Well, why not do both at the same time? I like it. If all the different subclasses end up getting abilities kind of along these lines, I can start to understand why they might have restricted smite to only once per turn, right? Because you might not want somebody just laying down these kind of things over and over and over again. Anyways, 10th level, Aura of Devotion. You and your allies are immune to the charmed condition while in your Aura of Protection. If a charmed ally enters the aura, the condition is suppressed while the ally is there, so very similar to what we saw before with the fear cancellation. Level 14, Holy Nimbus. As a bonus action, you can imbue your aura protection with holy power. The aura gains the following benefits for 1 minute or until you end them as a bonus action. Radiant damage. Whenever an enemy starts its turn in the aura, that creature takes radiant damage equal to proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier. That's not too bad. Notice there's no like saving throw for half or anything, so it kind of becomes almost like a spiritual weapon, but without. Spiritual weapon, spirit guardians, but without the movement difficult terrain modifier. It also creates sunlight. The aura is filled with bright light that is sunlight. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest or until you expend a spell slot of at least 4th level when you use it again. You're only getting up to 5th level spell slots, so that is pretty pricey. But, it's a pretty decent ability, so I can see there might be occasions where I might want to use it. Anyways, it then goes through the different feats, but we've already looked at some of that before. I think we'll probably just do a separate video for that, because this one's starting to get long already. But anyways, those are the Paladin changes. I've seen some people really complain about the nerf to Divine Smite and say that, Paladins are kind of going to be garbage now. I think that's an exaggeration. I've also seen people complain that they think Paladins are just getting better and better and better in every possible way, and that they're just going to outshine the rest of the party. I would argue they already did that to a certain extent. But, I guess we'll have to wait and see. We don't know what everybody else is going to be like. It occurs to me that we probably should at least take a look at the steed, because that is an important part of the class. So, find steed. So it's a large celestial fate or fiend. Choose when casting a spell. It's neutral. Armor class 10 plus 1 per spell level. Natural armor. Hit points. This will have more hit points than what a regular warhorse used to have. Already, if you're casting with a second level spell slot, you're already looking at 25 as opposed to, I think it was 19. And the movement speed is the same, but if you use a 4th or higher level spell slot, it gains a flying speed of 60 feet. So there are some pretty interesting things there. It also got some interesting bonus action abilities that it didn't used to have, such as Phase Step. Fey only, which charges after long rest. It can teleport up to 60 feet away. Veil Glare for Fiend only. Creature's eyes gleam with fiendish light as it targets one creature can see up to 60 feet away. Target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC or the frightened condition. And Healing Touch, celestial only. Touches another creature and restores another hit points equal to 2d8 plus the spell's level. Then just in general. So it says you get a large rideable animal of your choice, such as a horse, a camel, a dire wolf, or an elk. Whenever you cast a spell, choose the steed's creature type, celestial fey or fiend, which determines the certain traits in the stat block. Sorry, it's very late. I'm having a hard time reading anymore, which is a clear sign I need to wrap things up. Anyways, so steed is an ally to you and your companions in combat. It shares your initiative count and it functions as a controlled mount, as defined in the rules on mounted combat. If you're the incapacitated condition, it takes its turn immediately after yours and acts independently, focusing on protecting you. So if it drops to 0 hit points, if you dismiss it as bonus action, or if you die, it disappears, leaving behind anything it was wearing or carrying. If you cast a spell again, you decide whether you summon the steed that disappeared or a different one. And like I said, you can cast it with 3rd or higher level spell slots, which will buff its stats by giving more hit points, more armor class, potentially fly speed, of course, etc. In general, it's quite a bit better. I have seen some people complain, though, and I think this is a valid complaint, that someone like a cleric would be able to cast this, and they have higher spell slots than you, and they have faster spell class progression, which does mean that a cleric could be potentially better at fine steed than you are, which is kind of annoying since that's sort of a key thing to the paladin class. I kind of wish they just would have left it as a paladin ability and then added all that to the, like, all that text to the ability. I've realized that then the faithful steed section, instead of being like 2 paragraphs here, would have been, a page just for itself. But then you wouldn't have to worry about it, people like clerics being better paladins than paladins. So, that one could go either way. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the paladin. Overall, I think that the changes looked pretty interesting. I don't know. I guess the nerf to Divine Smite doesn't really bother me that much because I already felt like paladins were probably a little on the probably too good side, which is, let's be honest, that's probably one of the reasons I like them so much. But I also feel like paladins improved in so many other ways that it does kind of help to balance it out. And I mean, I actually had a paladin I wanted to play in a campaign. I started to, but then the DM got burnt out. The campaign ended early. But I was really looking forward to being able to actually be a paladin who was planning on casting a bunch of spells, because I'm not going to lie, all the paladins at our table, sooner or later they just turn into smite machines. And there's no going back, apparently, once you go down the road of smiting constantly. You forget you could even cast spells. So, maybe that'll be less of an issue now that, smite's limited once a turn. Or who knows, maybe people will be like, well, I can only smite once a turn, so I gotta make sure I do it, because, it's the only chance I have this turn to smite. Gotta take advantage of it. Who knows which way it'll go. Anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching. Please leave me your comments in the comment section. Don't be afraid to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and all that kind of stuff. All the YouTube stuff. And I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.